everyone. I think those of you that headed out here, I know that the mayor made that comment, is why am I going inside? I think I should be playing golf instead. But he did the right thing, and he took a left instead of going straight ahead to, was it hole 10? You said there was nobody at hole 10? There you go. Right. So I want to welcome all of you today to the Business and Leaders Luncheon, sponsored by the Gresham Area Chamber and also sponsored by Columbia Bank, the Boeing Company, Portland General Electric, our new sponsor, Persimmon Country Club, and our stakeholder sponsor, Gresham Barlow School District. And I also want to mention our media sponsor, which is MetroEast Community Media. They record the webinar today, and you get to listen to it again and watch it again. It's available on their cable channels, and you could pick up one of these as you go out to get what time the repeat or the rebroadcast is. So be sure and do that. And then encourage your friends and neighbors to watch this. There's always a lot of information in these meetings, and thanks to MetroEast, we can continue to spread that news. I want to acknowledge some folks that are in the audience today, and I want to start by acknowledging former State Senator Lori Monis Anderson. Thank you very much, Senator, for being here today. Appreciate that. And moving right along, then we have the Mayor of Gresham. Mayor Stovall is here. Applause, 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 please. And two councilors from the City Council, Councilor Piazza and Councilor Gladfelter. Thank you very much for being here today. Then I need to introduce my bosses, all of them, in no special order, but I do want to acknowledge the president of the chamber, Leslie Parker. Thank you, Leslie. And Warner, let's hold your applause from now on so that we can make it through here. Warner Allen from Warren Allen LLP. We have Nina Vetter is here from the City of Gresham, Andrew Spear from Portland General Electric, Kayla Viramontes from the Bold Orange, Steve Brown from the Outlook and Pamplin Media, and Brian York, President-elect, who's with Clackamas County Bank. Now you can applaud. How would that? So today's the first day of summer, and I couldn't wait, and what a surprise to wake up to sunshine. Mother Nature and the Lord looked at the calendar and said, gee, it's summer. Guess I better get some summer weather our way. So we so appreciate this memory that it was sunny for a change, the first day of summer. Our speaker today is a familiar name and face to Gresham. She had a professional life for 33 years as a registered dietitian and in health research. She retired from that and joined the ranks of public servant. Shirley Craddick, our speaker today, was a Gresham City Councilor from 2004 or 5, I can't remember, Shirley, to 2010. She championed environmental stewardship, and she responded well to local businesses and their concerns. The end of her elected time on City Council was through some very tough and hard financial times. Most of us remember the 2008 crash and almost burn days, but Shirley did not crash or burn. She went on to run for Metro Council. Her heartfelt focus was to be a trusted advocate for the interest of East County and to fight to get the residents here the representation that we deserve, whether it's in transportation or financial equity, natural green spaces in parks, or whatever the issue. She was always and still is a good listener, attentive, gracious, and thoughtful with her follow-through. When an elected leader leaves her position, it's always difficult as there are many relationships that have been formed, built on trust that has been built. We will miss Shirley as our Metro Councilor. She's term limited, and so at the end of this cycle in January, she will no longer be a represented. But in true fashion, Shirley is not done yet. She's here today to make sure that we know what Metro does, what it has done, and what's in the future. Shirley will be presenting the story of Metro today. And then, after answering your questions, and yes, there will be a time for question and answer, Shirley, we're going to provide you with just a little story about Shirley. So, Shirley Craddick, would you like to come up, please, and give us your presentation?
Well, thank you. What a true honor to be here today. I'm flattered that I was invited, so thank you, Lynn, and nice to see all of you today. It still feels like it's been a while since we've seen each other. I know we're slowly acclimating, getting back into real life, going to events, but it still feels like it's been a long time since I've been out and about and seeing people. The Metro Council still is hosting our meetings and virtually. Not so much that we can't or don't want to be together, but it's more about getting the technology. Because of the supply chain challenges we're facing, not all the technology is here yet, so we're not going to be able to get back into the building for a while yet. So Metro is still basically working outside in the virtual world, and so still haven't done a lot of in-person events, so we're just kind of becoming more acclimated again. So I always like to go back, just briefly review with you a little bit about Metro. I'll try to be brief because I know many of you are very, very knowledgeable about the role that Metro plays. So if you could go ahead and change the slide, please. I forget, I don't have the clicker.
There's a clicker right there.
Oh, okay.
I'm happy to do it too.
So I hit the right side.
Yes, the right.
Okay, gotcha. So this is just a continuum to show you kind of the role. Oh, got it back. Go back. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Okay. So Metro is that regional government, and I always have to describe the role that Metro governments play. If you look at every large metropolitan area in the United States, they have a regional government. If you think of San Francisco, you think of Los Angeles, you think of Minneapolis, you think of Houston. Each of those metropolitan areas, there is a regional government. And the way they operate is that each of the cities that are in those regional areas appoint a member to that COG, Council of Governments. And so that organization then works on those challenges that each of those regions face that cross city boundaries. The difference in this regional government is that you directly elect your representative. And when a decision is made in the region after working with the region, we are able to put a lot of those discussions, those decisions in place and make it becomes law. And so that gives us the ability to be a smidgen more effective, maybe. I guess we could debate that. But it allows us to create some initiatives that we wouldn't be able to without the work that the Metro Council plays. So Metro was created in the 70s and 80s. Over time, and this charter slowly changed. But it's a 7-member body, and we have 4 primary responsibilities. And one of those, as you probably already know, is the garbage and the recycling system. And the best way that I can describe it is that when you take your garbage can out to the end of your driveway each week, Metro takes responsibility for it. We license and permit the transfer centers. We license and permit the recycling facilities. We initiate the recycling programs, the education programs. When your city hosts an event where you can bring in bulky waste, it's Metro's funds that help support that. We also are responsible for the urban and land use and the transportation planning for the region. And so we work with the 24 cities in the region and working on those future plans for our land use. We manage that urban growth boundary. And we also then are the management planning organization. It's a federal designation through the federal highway system to be able to manage the regional funds that we receive for transportation, construction, and planning. And then in addition, we have our Parks and Nature, and this was created in the in the 90s when the region got together, one of those regional initiatives that then put in place the future, where the region came together and said, as this region grows, as more people move here, we want to preserve and save and protect those special areas that we all love. You know, when you walk down the street and you ask someone on the street, why do you live here? It's very likely the response is going to be because they love the beauty of the area. And so Metro's park system was established in the early 90s, and we continue to nurture that system. And then we also own and operate a series of venues: the Oregon Convention Center, Arlene Stitcher Concert Hall, what we call the P5, which includes the Antoinette Hatfield Hall, the Keller Auditorium, and then the Expo Center, and then along with that is the Oregon Zoo. And these are all facilities that are available for the people that live in this region. So if you could go on into the next. So as you may know, it's about 1.4 million people live within the metro boundary, about 40% of the state population. Each of the districts the boundaries are created by the number of people that are in each of those districts. About 278,000 people live in each district. The Metro Council president runs region-wide, and by being in that position, she represents about 40% of the state population. So if you could go ahead. So I'd like to now get into some of the initiatives that we're working on, and then I'll be glad then later then to take some questions. So I'd like to introduce you to this gentleman. He is someone that has been formerly homeless that has now found housing. I know we've all been really frustrated on what's happened with the challenges that we face in this region, the number of people that are homeless that are living on the street, the number of people that have that need support and need help. And so Metro got the support of the region in 2020 to pass the Supportive Housing Services measure. And that measure now is in place, and the funding is now being moved. This gentleman is named Lonnie. We met him right after Thanksgiving when the funding measure was approved. And was just kicking off. He lost a family member to an overdose, a drug addiction, and was looking for himself to not go back into using drugs. And so he got involved with a North Portland shelter called Do Good Multnomah. And within that, he was found shelter and then later housing, and then also got the support to find a job. And so because of that supportive housing services measure, the money became available for him to be able to help him get his life become more functional and structured and help him overcome the challenge that he faced. So we were really pleased with the voters' support in 2020 to pass that measure. This is a measure that supports the services that so many people that are living on the street need to find shelter, to find housing, and those supportive services that help them overcome the challenges that they face. And of course, some of that is like drug addiction, alcohol, mental health challenges. So if you could go on to the next. So I want to talk a little bit about the supportive housing measure. It was passed by the voters in 2020, and it took a while to get it up and moving. We had to create the tax system to begin first. And so the taxes went, so the measure was passed in May. 6 months later then, the measure goes into effect. And then the county started their work that next July, and then the first really large bolus of funding has just become available. So it's a slow workup, but we really now are on our way, and funding is becoming available, and we hope these services will begin to see a difference in the region now that these services are available. If you go on the next slide, please. So today, the goal of the measure is to help people find housing that are not otherwise able to find it. And I always want to describe how affordable housing that is publicly subsidized. So the affordable housing, and I'll get into the construction bond measure in just a moment. So everyone that lives in affordable housing pays rent. That rent is for people that have a job and are able to pay their rent. That rent is subsidized and is bought down by the public funds to allow them to get into housing that they wouldn't be able to afford through market rate housing. For people, though, that live on the street that often have no income, this supportive housing measure then picks up the difference in that, and it allows people then to have access to housing that they wouldn't have before. And so to date, we're beginning to get about close to 800 people now have been stabilized, get into permanent housing because they now have that supportive services available to them. And then almost another 3,000 so far that have been at risk for homelessness have been able to find housing. Because oftentimes the funding that's available, the supportive services that are available for people to be in housing is temporary, it's short-lived. And so people have housing until that money, that funding source runs out. And so this measure is picking up the difference in that for those people that were at risk for losing their housing, for being evicted. And so then we also now have another 600 and some shelter beds that are available. So if you could go on to the next one. Okay, so then the second measure that we got support from the region was was the construction bond measure, and this is the measure that builds housing that we haven't had an adequate amount of through the region. To date, we have about 217 units that are already open, another 3,000 that are in the design, the permitting, and the construction phase, and then the plans is it'll be able to support have housing available for over 12,000 people. That's the size of the city of Fairview. So if you can go on to the next one. So I want to. So what's unique about this measure is that the decision was made when we were creating the measure that the money that is raised in each county will stay in each county. So the funding that taxes that are raised in Clackamas County, in Washington County, and Multnomah County, each will be left in that county to build housing. And so what's unique about this measure, we finally are having housing built throughout affordable housing built throughout the entire region. In the past, oftentimes, the only jurisdictions that were building affordable housing for many years was the city of Portland and Multnomah County. And so when I sat on the Gresham City Council, I know the councilors that are in this room, Mayor Stovall's probably have heard this, we often were approached as why is all the affordable housing being built in East Multnomah County? It concentrates poverty, and it makes people that live in affordable housing only have one choice. And so what's unique about this measure is that we're finally now getting affordable housing being built throughout the entire region. So people can choose to live where they want to live and need to live, and not where the only places they can find housing. So, if you look at the color, first of all, the color indicates where they are in the stage of construction. So the lighter blue is the pre-construction stage. So you think about if you're going to build a house, the first thing you got to do is find a parcel of land to build on. Secondly, then, you need to find an architect, work with an architect to get it designed. Then you need to find a contractor. Then you need to work with the city jurisdiction that you're going to build the house in to go through all the permitting process. And so that's the same thing that's happening in this bond measure, is that we're in a continuum of stages of where the housing that's under construction is. And so those icons are depicting where construction has occurred. So Gresham actually was one of the first cities that got the housing built. And that was please refresh me on the name of the housing unit. It's built by Hacienda. It's there in the Rockwood area off of Yam Hill. That was one of the first affordable housing. Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's one of the first ones that were constructed. And so the others are all in a different stage of being constructed. And I know now Gresham has some other funding available that they're going to use for another affordable housing unit. The money was distributed to the agencies that already receive funding through HUD. So the money went to the 3 counties, which are the housing authorities for each of in the region, Washington, Clackamas, and Multnomah's housing authority. Multnomah's housing authority is Home Forward. And then the funding also was distributed to the 4 cities in the region that receive HUD funding. And those are cities that are over 50,000 population. So that was Gresham, that was Portland, Hillsborough, and Beaverton. And so all those 7 agencies are the ones that are building the housing. And so the money is passed through to a nonprofit organization and actually then does the construction and takes responsibility for that housing, but it's each of those jurisdictions that work with those nonprofit organizations that are actually doing the construction. Did that answer your question, Senator? Okay, go ahead. So our other responsibility that I've heard a lot about recently is the amount of garbage we're seeing on our streets. And it's unbelievable how things changed in a couple of years, isn't it, during this pandemic. That's one of Metro's major responsibilities is the trash cleanup. During the pandemic, we've had what we call it, you've heard us referred to in the past, the RID Patrol, the Regional Illegal Dumping Patrol. So Metro has crews out there that pick up illegal dumps along our streets and in our public areas. We've had this going for many years. But during the pandemic, they had to step back because of the restrictions that the pandemic required. And so it just exacerbated the amount of garbage that ended up on the streets. But since the pandemic, or since as we begin to pull ourselves out of the pandemic, we've increased the crews that are out there. We now have up to 6 crews, and they pick up over 1,000 tons of garbage in a year's time. So it's an amazing amount of garbage that they collect each day. They're down to about 2 to 3 days response. During the pandemic, sometimes it was weeks before they could get to the cleanup. I'm really proud of this work. In the past, we were using incarcerated people to help us with the cleanup. We worked with Multnomah County Corrections. We now have changed that program to working with people that were formerly incarcerated, and they now are being hired with a living wage job, with health benefits. They are now employees of Metro. And so it's really a really successful program. It's really fun to see them succeed and do well. And I'm really proud of the program. If you want to go on to the next slide. So you can go to Metro's website and you can look up the dashboard. You can, if you're out walking around, you have your phone with you, you can report an illegal dump as you're walking. You can then monitor where they are and what stage they are in the progress of picking it up. And so this is a screenshot from the website to show you of how it works. Each color indicates a different stage of the pickup process. But you can see where they've been pretty concentrated, primarily in Multnomah County and Clackamas County. If you could go on to the next. So another big responsibility Metro has is, of course, transportation, planning for the future, and then, of course, distributing the regional funds that we receive, the flexible funds. So we are, by federal law, we have to relook at our regional plan, transportation plan, every 6 years. The next update is going to be in 2023, so we are in the preparation process of that right now. Working with each city, Mayor Stovall sits on JPAC, the Joint Policy Advisory Committee on Transportation. That is the committee that makes the recommendations to the Metro Council regarding the transportation plan. And so we're working with the region on that update. And the focus is focusing on how do we make sure our plan it's safer and easier to get around. Unusual number of people are being killed on our arterials right now. Sometimes 10 to 20 people per month. It's just outrageous amount of number of people that have lost their life on our regional arterials. So we're looking at safety. We're looking at how to improve transit. We know that we can't just depend on the car anymore to get around. We cannot build enough highways. You've heard the phrase, we cannot build ourselves out of congestion. I recently traveled to Washington, D.C. The Joint Policy Advisory Committee traveled to Washington, D.C. just recently. We met with some of our federal Department of Transportation staff. We got to meet with an undersecretary in the Secretary's office. And I came back with an interesting statistic. Right now in our country, there are 2 million more cars than there are adults that live here in the United States. So we have more cars than people by 2 million, adults, than by 2 million. And so there's a reason why there's more congestion out there, a reason why it's more difficult to get around. And so how do we manage this? How do we make sure that we can still have a society that we enjoy living in and can go from one place to the other? Transit's going to play a big role in that. We want to make transit the easy and the most effective way to get around. And so coming up, if you want to go to the next slide, please, is the first bus rapid transit system that will be built in the Portland Metro region. It's called the FX. It's on Division Street. Mayor Stovall, I believe, was involved with that. Some of you others might have been here involved in that project. It took us about 18 months to plan it, and now it's been under construction. If you travel down Division, you're going to see lots of infrastructure change along the route. You can see, and it's all being built to support the bus system. It's going to be it's an articulated bus. It'll hold about 60 people. It'll come every 15 minutes. At each of the stations, there is the technology there to know when the bus is going to be arriving, which is really nice if you're like me. If I don't know when that bus is going to arrive, I'm going to find another some other way to get around. I'm not going to wait around. And so it'll really create certainty to know that the bus is going to be there. So this is the first bus system that's being established. We'll see, we're going to learn a lot from it. The next, we are already though now in the planning phases, and this is going to be a part of the next regional transportation plan, is focusing on two other big congestion arterials that we have in the region, 82nd Avenue, and then looking at Tualatin Valley Highway on the west side of the region. We just recently were able to, because of the state legislature's support, I know the senator was involved in this early on, is we were able to get funding, the city of Portland was able to get funding to be able to move 82nd Avenue out of the ODOT's jurisdiction into the city of Portland's jurisdiction. And so that allows us now to begin to create these new amenities along 82nd Avenue, and they're in the beginning stages of planning that. So if you want to go to the next one, please. So on to our venues. Like I said, it was a huge, really difficult time during the pandemic. As you all know, everything closed, and we had to cancel many events at the Oregon Convention Center, at the Star Arlene Stinster Concert Hall, at the Expo, and at the Keller Auditorium. And many of these events are planned years in advance, and so once you cancel those events, it's years before they're going to return. And so we're just now beginning to build up again and begin to reschedule some of these events. Metro, because of that, had to lay off about 40% of their workforce during that time, so it was pretty devastating. But they're on our way, and we're really pleased that we're beginning to get back to opening these venues. If you want to go on the next one. Go back one more. So regarding the venues, one thing that it's important to point out about these venues is that these are part of the traded sector economy. When convention comes into town, these are people that are coming from other states. These are people that are coming from other countries. And so when people come to visit Portland, they're eating in our restaurants, they're visiting our different amenities that we have in the region, they're staying in our hotels, and they're bringing money from the outside in. And that's part of a traded sector economy. So they play a huge role in the vibrancy of the downtown and in the greater region. And so it's having these be active and involved and have presentations there again is really important. The Oregon Zoo now, we're really proud that the 2008 bond measure, all the projects were done on time within budget. It took us 13 years, but we did it. We focus on endangered species, the polar bear and the rhino, many others, the chimps. So really proud to have the Oregon Zoo open in a beautiful new facility. So if you want to go on to the next one. So the other thing that thank the voters is that in 3 times now the voters have supported the renewing the construction bond measure, the Parks and Nature bond measure. And so those are the funds that allow us to pass through to the cities in the region for a local share. The city of Gresham was the first city to use Metro's local share for this past bond measure that was passed in 2018. They purchased the Shaw property, which is a property adjacent to the Grant Butte wetlands that is along Powell Boulevard. If any of you travel Powell often as you head east on Powell, and it makes the big curve into Gresham, and you're looking to the left, that's the Grant Butte wetlands. What's unique about that area is those are the headlands to Fairview Creek. Fairview Creek runs north, Fairview Creek becomes the Columbia Slough. So it's a really unique parcel, and so I'm really proud and pleased that the city council was supportive of that and used part of their local share to help purchase that property for a future city park. But the other value of these bond measure is these are the funds we use to protect these special properties and lands throughout our region. If you look at this hillside out here, this is a property that Metro purchased in 2010, and it's protected that hillside. If you look to this side, Hogan Butte, the city of Gresham has used some of Metro funds to upgrade the facility. It's a beautiful facility on top where you can, on a good day, finally we have a good day, you can look out and see the vista. And then just across the street from Hogan Butte is Gabbert Butte, and on Regner Road, and that will soon become another Metro regional park in the future. So 2 new parks during this pandemic have opened, and one of these is a Newell Creek Canyon. This is in Oregon City. We've had the property for many years. The best way I can describe it, if you're traveling 205 and you're pulling into Oregon City, heading west, you get to Highway 213, or the road that goes to Molalla. There's a big natural area right there by the freeway. That's Newell Creek Canyon. And what's unique about it is it's a true canyon. It's quite deep. And you get into it, and the sound of the traffic just goes away. It's just silent. It's amazing how that can dissipate. So it's a beautiful new facility. All of Metro's parks are passive. They're for bicycling, they're for walking, they're for hiking. And so this is one of the first mountain bike parks that Metro has constructed. So if you want to go on. The other new park is Chehalem Ridge in the west part of the region. I can tell you it's 50 miles from here. We had a grand opening this last week, and I was clocking it on my odometer. It's a beautiful new facility. It's an upland that sits above the Tualatin Valley. It looks west into the Coast Range. It's the second largest park that Metro owns, and they're also available for hiking, walking, bicycling, and horseback riding, so if you enjoy horseback riding. So it's open now, and it's just gorgeous, and it's a beautiful new place, if you want to move on now. So the other thing that we've been so fortunate to get the voter support over the years is the levies. These are the levies, these are the operating levies. These are the funds that we use to do the restoration work. If you've ever been out in one of these areas in the wintertime, you might come across a crew that's planting new trees, new seedlings in the ground. This is the one that protects that. This is the one that, of course, allows the support of these facilities. And these are also the ones that are building the new trail, help build the new trail connections. So if you want to go on to the next. I wanted to, just another map is showing you where some of all these facilities are in the region that we've purchased and put in place over time. These little dots are just showing you the size of the facility, where it is, just to give you some kind of identification of the properties that we focus on. So Metro, when the bond measure was passed in 2018, Metro keeps a part of that funding to continue to help purchase land. And so we identified target areas. So before we go to the voters, we want the voters to know this is where we're going to put our funding. And so these target areas demonstrate where we're going to be focusing our funds over the year's time. And that's partly what this map is showing. Okay, that's it. So glad to take any questions or comments.
Yeah, so who has a question for Counselor? Oh, come on. Andrew?
Hi, Shirley. It's good to see you. One thing that's been tension, I know, with my work at PBA and then with the Gresham Chamber is the taxing of business as part of these bond measures. And I'm curious your insights as we go forward and think about into the future. What is the council looking at in terms of governance and relationship and collaboration regionally that isn't related to just simply tax measures and bond measures?
So what initiatives are we going to focus on? Is that kind of what you're asking?
Well,
other than something that doesn't include money?
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about, something that doesn't include money, and then, tying it to an outcome and governance, and how can Metro be that collaborator in amongst the region that isn't putting such fatigue on local businesses from a tax standpoint?
Well, Metro is that body that brings the region together, and it's like I said, one big value of that is that the Metro Council then can put into place laws that help move these initiatives forward. So the supportive housing measure we're in the infancy. We have a long ways to go to really have it moving like we hope. The challenge that we have is Metro is a funding agency, but the money is being distributed to the 3 counties, and they're the ones that are determining how those funds get used. I hope over time that will tighten that up more. Where Metro, we have an oversight committee in place to monitor the work. One thing I think is going to be really valuable about coming out of the supportive housing measure is the Tri-County Planning Committee. And so the measure is forcing, this again is why the value of what the Metro Council can do is by putting that measure, being voters approving that, it creates law. And that law is it's creating this tri-county planning organization where the 3 counties for the first time are working together to begin to plan how they support homeless people in the region. And I hope over time we're going to see efficiencies be created. We're going to see traded, different kinds of practices that will be traded and worked out together. So we work more as one region and not 3 counties. As you know, Multnomah County has been the primary source of homeless services for years in the region. Clackamas County didn't have those services. Washington County didn't have those services. So all needs were coming to Multnomah County. And so for the first time, these other counties now are beginning to take on their share of the responsibility. But they now have got to work out efficiencies and how effective they can be. And we have definitely a ways to go. So that's one big hope I have for this supportive housing measure, is that over time, we're going to really begin to see improved system throughout the region.
Thank you, Andrew, for that question. Another question? Leslie, here we go.
Thank you. I was very curious about the Division Corridor program. Is there another community in the United States that's using that program, or how did you guys come up with that?
The bus rapid transit. Yeah, this is actually being used in other parts of the United States too. Federal funding has been available for it. Of course, we've been focusing on light rail for many years. They are huge, costly projects. We have a project already planned, the Southwest Corridor. And the way federal transportation funding works is that they often will give us half of the money, but the other half has to come from the region. And so for a light rail project, that is planned, the one in Southwest that will connect Portland to Tigard to Tualatin. Our local share is in the billions of dollars. So we recognize that's a big lift. And so how do we begin to look at these other corridors that also need help, but for a lot less funding? And that's what these bus rapid transit enhanced bus is all about. It's creating amenities and using technology that allows the bus to move through the corridor much more efficiently and effectively. The buses will have, when they get to a light, a signal, they get to go first. Before the cars do. They will be able to jump start. They will be able to pull off in places that gives them time to get people on and off. And of course, the technology at the station itself is going to be helpful. So it's just helping the buses move through the corridors faster. So yes, it's a practice that's being used throughout the United States. And we now are going to be focusing on 3 new corridors that we haven't. And so division is definitely the test. We'll learn a lot through that.
Another question. Stephen. Is it Stephen? Or is that when you're in trouble?
Hi, Shirley. I never understood why the bus rapid transit ditched Powell. I thought originally it was scheduled to go on to Powell, and then at some point in time it shifted over to Division. I was curious what that was all about.
Well, I learned a lot in that, and one of that is how do we create expectations, or appropriate expectations. So when you start looking at a corridor, transportation planners, they look at a wide swath. And so, and then over time, as they begin to narrow down and do the research and price things out and begin to look at the amenities that are needed, they have to come to some decision is what can we do that's efficient, effective, that doesn't cost an arm and a leg or way too much money. And so both Powell and Division were considered for future bus rapid transit projects. But as we got into the Powell, looking at Powell more specifically, the cost to upgrade Powell to be able to be in a bus rapid transit corridor was just way too much. The major challenge was the railroad that crosses Powell Boulevard at 19th, is it, or 17th Avenue? And to get a bus through there and having its own corridor, having its own way, would cost a huge amount of money. So they had to move off of Powell and focus on Division. We also were looking at taking it all the way to Mount Hood Community College, and it was a real disappointment when we couldn't financially afford that. And so the bus only goes to the Gresham Transit Center, and it was a real disappointment for me. But it was all about what is physically possible, how much money you have, and what is really will be the most effective, and that's how they will make a decision. Powell is still on. The regional transportation plan is a future corridor to focus on. We will come back to it, but we'll have to be prepared because it's going to be a lot of money to be able to make Powell a better corridor for transit through there.
Another question. We have a church, Shirley, in town that has a laundry mission that combines two of the interests that Metro takes care of. One's homeless and one's trash. And they have a working relationship with two laundromats in town and use the laundromat all night long. Volunteers come all night long. Homeless people come and bring their clothing. The church volunteers pay for, wash, fold, and return the laundry back to the homeless people. And what they've found is that when a homeless person clothing gets too dirty, they just leave them behind. So it's trash for somebody. But in this case, it's dignity, the volunteer, and it's done by a local church. Maybe other churches do this. I didn't know about it, but I was in awe of that kind of ministry that was happening right here. And they help the folks that are in the Gresham area that are homeless too. So anyway, that's just a little food for thought that helps you with your trash and helps you with your homeless. So another question, Warner, and then Nick.
Hello, Shirley. Thanks so much for coming out and giving us this information. So I'm curious to know why Metro decided to use the housing funds and submit them to nonprofits as opposed to opening up to competitive bidding by construction firms who are used to building things like apartments and that sort of thing.
So, see if I understand your question. So the construction, so affordable housing has always been supported using nonprofit organizations. So the money comes, in the past, has always come through the counties, and then they work with a nonprofit who actually is responsible for the housing once it's constructed, but they use a for-profit firm that builds it. Is that so? Construction firms are very much involved in this, and they are for-profit organizations, and so but the work they work through the nonprofit organization, who hires the actual construction firm. So did that answer your question? But the nonprofit organization then takes responsibility for the building once it's constructed. And so they are involved in the beginning and being able to make sure they can build a building that they can afford. And then of course, then they hire the construction firm that actually then does the construction. So I don't know if did that answer your question?
All right, Nick.
Thank you. These are big issues we're trying to solve, right? As someone who might, settle in the metro area, might get married and, buy a house, am I going to be voting on stuff like this 10 years from now? Is it just more of these small measures? They're not small, they're big. 12,000 affordable homes is not nothing. But is it going to be just a lot of these that have to pass in order to really make a huge difference? Or how do you see like 10, 15 years from now?
What's going to be the picture, the future? We know that there still is more need than 12,000 units. There's a huge need for having adequate affordable housing. So we don't think this is going to solve all our problems, but it sure will hopefully help make a big dent in them. That's for sure. The supportive housing measure is definitely a learning how to get 4 agencies to work together. That's 3 counties and 1 metro, and hopefully over time we'll keep refining that and helping us work together better to really, like I said, become efficient and effective with these funds. But we recognize, though, that the need is just so tremendous, and so unfortunately time will tell, but we hope this will make a big dent in the challenges that we face. And is it going to solve it? I wish I could promise that, but I'm not able to do that.
We have time for one more question. And it looks like I've shushed them up by saying one more. Oh, Michael has a question.
Hi, Shirley. I too want to thank you for all of your service through the city council and then with the Metro. We really appreciate it. So I'm wondering, now that you're retired, maybe you could bring your expertise from the Metro. I don't think you guys have ever had a bond or a levy that hasn't passed. And we were looking at in Gresham, so maybe you could bring your expertise. I'm disappointed that the city manager and the mayor left to do that then. So, but you guys seem to have the ability to pass pretty much any funding levy that you put to the voters.
I'd love to see Gresham have some successful measures.
really appreciate
It's
that.
time to invest in our city, that's for sure. Actually, we've had a measure that didn't pass that we were extremely disappointed in. That was the transportation measure. Yeah. And that's the one that would have built the light rail. So that we're not able to build until that measure is passed.
Okay, great. So Shirley, stay up there, please. Didn't she do a great job? Yeah. So, okay, we can be shoulder to shoulder. Shirley, there are still a few months left on your council tenure. But we wanted to take this opportunity today to give you a Gresham Chamber thank you. So I would like everyone to please look over here, and we're going to see a short collection of Councilor Craddick. So it didn't start at the beginning, is that? There, now back one more. There we go, thank you. All right, so this is who we're talking about. Here we go, unveiling. Now, I have no idea where you are in some of these photos, and maybe you don't want to tell us where you are in some of these photos, but they were interesting to me. So this is the faces and places of Shirley, our counselor that's making a difference. That's home forward that you could see on the right-hand side. Yes, Shirley walks the walk and bikes the bike, or whatever the statement is. It's at our Business Excellence Award, Shirley. I'm sure some of these are bringing back memories to you. This is at our teddy bear parade, and Shirley never rides in a car at the teddy bear parade. She always walks, always, rain or shine. Do you remember where this was?
No, I don't.
I can't remember. It was an opening of something, and whatever that big guy is with the big mouth wants to be a politician someday. Senator, you're part of that one, that photo today too. So we want to thank you, Shirley, very much. So again, please don't go away. On all of the tables are some flowers. And what I would like is for one of you from each table to bring all the flowers, not the whole container, just the flowers. Please bring them up. And Shirley, if you'd stand here and collect them. We are a very diverse community. You have represented a very diverse community, and this is the representation of some very diverse folks from all over the area. So here you go.
Wow. Okay. Thank you very much.
Could you come forward a little bit? Get forward so they can get you. So Shirley, thank you for being here today, and thank you for your service, not just as a city councilor, but as a Metro councilor. And maybe you should take Michael up on supporting us in other ways. So, and thank you again for your presentation today. I have a little wrapper for that afterwards, so you can get them all home safe and sound. Okay.
I could add, I saw the photo of the condor reminded me. So, Metro has a facility in Clackamas County where we raise condor chicks, hatch, and they are an endangered species. There's still only about 500 in the world. But just recently, the Yurok tribe in the Klamath area the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services allowed them to become a release site for the condor. And so they now have that designation. And the first condors were just recently released there, and that means they will now be flying in Oregon. So you could very likely, if you're in Southern Oregon and you look up, there's a bird with a 10-foot wingspan that very likely is a condor. So thank you for all you do to help. Yeah.
So they don't eat koi, right? Because we're having trouble with our koi protection in our backyard. Okay. Okay, thank you, Shirley. Here's your. Thank you. There you go. So I want to thank all of you for participating in that. It was very nice of you to be helpful. I want to thank our sponsors, Persimmon Country Club, Columbia Bank, Portland General Electric, the Boeing Company as our presenting sponsors, and Gresham Barlow School District. MetroEast Community Media, don't forget to pick this up so you can share this with your friends so they can do a repeat of the performance that she did. So upcoming events, Monday, just in a few days, it's going to be hot, 86 degrees. We have our golf tournament. It benefits the Gresham Area Chamber Foundation. The foundation, among other things of support, provides scholarships for students in programs like our Gresham Chamber Leadership Academy. So be sure and come and participate in that. Are there any places left, Aaron, to golf? Or do we have a couple of more rounds of golf? Okay, Warner? Everybody look at Warner. You're already signed up as of when? Today. 2 weeks ago. Well, you need to check with Aaron to make sure, because I would hate for you to miss this opportunity to be second again for 3 years in a row. Okay, so I know, and it's forever recorded, so you can listen to that statement again. And we also have our world famous Golden Whisk Awards back. Maybe not world, but we're going to rely on Pamphlet Media to make it the world famous by getting the word out. It's a week from tomorrow. It's on Wednesday, the 29th at Riegelman's. We're back, and we have 4 incredible chefs that are going to knock your socks off with their culinary skills. Well, at least their creativity. So, and Brian York is one of those chefs. So be sure and come. And we've got another special guest. Miss Oregon was just crowned last weekend, and Gresham Ford is supporting the pageant with giving her a car. And so she's going to come here and take a look at the Golden Whisk Award as she receives the car from Gresham Ford. So got another little stuffing. So come. Warner was a chef. He won 1 year. Kayla was a chef, you lost, came in second, whatever. So anyway, Shirley, I invite you to come, and you can vote and it not really count except for clout to own the Whisk Award plaque for the following year. So I want to thank you all very much for being here today. So the meeting is adjourned. Go forth and make a profit.